As 2023 is close to being over, you have many different people on YouTube, on Twitter, giving out their own market prediction or forecast for 2024, and some are even expecting a depression in 2025, which is very interesting to me, and I decided to give my own kind of outlook just for fun for 2024. I looked at many different market datas and I estimated a pretty reasonable return for the S&P 500 for 2024. I don't know if I'm going to be right or wrong. I'm going to go back at the end of 2024 and review this video, and if I was right or wrong, I'm going to tell you exactly what it is at the end of the video. But in terms of the market in general, I've shared this graph with you before, and this is mainly that the majority of the decline occurs after the Fed pivots. I mean, this is very hard to determine, but over the 21st century, every time the Fed is cutting rates, the market crashed like 51%, 58%, 35%. And the question is, will the same thing happen in 2024? Because the Fed is about to cut rates maybe in mid-2024. And if this happens, are we going to crash 30 and 40 and 50% over the next year or two? Or are we going to rally this time? And this is the question I've been asking myself for a while, because this graph has been so accurate that every time Fed is cutting rates, we pretty much went down over 35%, which is a very, very high number. Now, in terms of another chart that I found, is that normally, whenever the Fed cut rates, we do decline on the S&P, but only if we were in a recession. And this is the performance of the S&P in terms of the dark blue and the light blue. The light blue is whenever we have a recession. Over the last 3 times, whenever the Fed was cutting rates, we were entering a recession in 2000, 2008, and in March 2020. So we were entering a recession and earnings were declining, and this is why the S&P went down after the rate cuts. But at other times, whenever we did not have a recession and the Fed cut rates, it has been historically bullish for the S&P, and the S&P did not crash on this news, and it did rally. So the question we should be asking ourselves is, are we going to have a recession in 2024? And for me personally, most indicators are not showing me that we're going to have a recession in 2024, although some of the obvious ones are kind of claiming that we're going to have one. But for me personally, it doesn't seem like we're going to have one. Maybe it's not as obvious in hindsight, but to me, I mean, I don't think we're going to have a recession, but you have a very accurate indicator that has been accurate 100% of the time. And this is the 10-year minus the 3 months curve for the treasury yields and stuff, for maturities. And every time we went below zero, we had a recession right after. It happened in 1989, it happened in 2000s, it happened in 2008, it happened in March 2020, before March 2020, and it also happened right now. So the question is, this is 100% accuracy. Is this time different? Are we going to have a recession in 2024? If we do have a recession in 2024, then the S&P will most likely decline after the Fed cut rates as it has done in the past. But for me personally, looking at, many other things, I am not seeing a recession in 2024. So my main bet is no recession in 2024, especially as the Fed will be lowering interest rates. This is going to relieve a lot of people with credit card debt, a lot of companies with higher interest rates, and many other things. We have lower inflation a little bit. So I'm not seeing a recession in 2024. So in terms of the return of the S&P 500, most of it in 2023 has been due to a valuation or a multiple expansion. You could see here in the kind of light blue area. Most of it is valuations. Very little is dividend, and a little bit is on earnings growth and stuff. But most of it has been a massive multiple expansion for stocks like Apple, Microsoft, Google, Nvidia, Tesla. They got a massive multiple expansion. So for me personally, looking at the S&P 500 PE ratio sitting at 26, which is a high, and looking at most of the returns, which has been due to a massive multiple expansion in 2023, I would say that the multiple expansion story is over, and it will most likely be an earnings story again in 2024. Now, in terms of the earnings story and earnings expectations for 2024, they are somewhere around 11.8%. So between 10 to 12% kind of earnings growth, which is very, very high. And I don't personally believe the companies are going to beat it, because they did beat a lot in 2023, and we are entering 2024 with higher expectations. So I would highly doubt they would beat the 11.8%. They might disappoint a little bit, or they could be accurate around 11.8%. So something else that I'm also seeing is most of the times, every time we pretty much have a negative year, we have more than 2 positive years in a row. with the exception, of course, with the 2000s, we had 3 negative years in a row. But most of the time, after we had a negative year, we had around 2 years of positive returns in a row. As you can see it here, I'm putting my mouse. We had over 5 years of positive returns, negative year, 3 years, negative years over like 7 years, negative year, 2 or 3 years, negative year, 2 years. So we mostly pretty much have 2 positive years of returns. And from me looking at 11.8% of earnings, and for me believing that the multiple expansion story is over and we're not going to have a multiple contraction if we have no recession and the Fed is cutting rates, it would be an earnings story. So I would personally expect the S&P to return between 10 to 12% in 2024 if we do not have a recession and if we do not have any major banking crisis or a black swan event, which no one in the world can pretty much predict. So I would say low double digits, 10 to 12%. To me, this seems very, very fair, maybe around 8% even, but I'm not seeing a massive crash in 2024 if we have no recession and if we have no major black swan event. This is my opinion. It was not financial advice. So thank you for watching the video. I really hope you enjoyed it. So if you did, please press the like button and maybe consider subscribing. So I hope to see you in another video.